pass on our experiences. And action is deeply practical action, practical in the Aristotelian sense, in which we try to accommodate particular circumstances which we encounter. Let me give you an example. It's not perfect, but it captures some of what I wanted to say. It was in yesterday's Globe, the Globe and Mail. It was about the Chinese effort to relieve people in the aftermath of the earthquake. And it surprised me because I didn't realize how successful the Chinese were in doing so. So, I quote, "Within hours of the quake, China was able to mobilize its vast human resources and target them at a massive disaster in a remote and forbidding region. More than 100,000 troops, police, medical workers, and volunteers of every kind were astonishingly quick to reach the worst-hit cities to search for survivors, offer relief, and evacuate the homeless to sports stadiums and tents." And then, "As an organizational feat, it was extraordinary. Much of the response was improvised and instinctive, yet it meshed together in unexpectedly efficient ways using the best government, muscle, military power, corporate resources, individual volunteerism, and grassroots creativity." I doubt whether the author or the journalist is an organization theorist, but I think we can sort of redescribe this in organization theory terms. In Barbara's terms and Bruno's, I guess this would be kind of connecting different human and non-human actors in a network. It is about formal representation. There must be contingency plans in place. Otherwise, 100,000 people cannot be mobilized efficiently, as we saw with Katrina. There must also be, but contingency plans are not all there is. There must be some kind of broader practices in which people take part. This could be national sentiment, what it is to be, in moments of crisis, to be a patriot, which brings out the best in people, but also acts of improvisation, and in which people try to do their best in unpredictable circumstances. And then we argue that this was an organized, successfully organized effort. It's not a formal organization. It's not a single organization as such, but it is different pieces, as it were, of the action net, in Barbara's terms, which were brought together successfully. It is an instance of representation and practice and improvisation here. So, from an improvisation point of view, the organization, from this third ontological component point of view, the organization is a pattern, something which we have known ever since at least Nobel winner the Srebrenitician described organization in the 50s as a pattern. It is a pattern which emerges from these situated accommodations. If you want a different imagery, these three components, representation, practice, and action or improvisation, I think these could be arrayed as follows. Representation or formal organization is an input into a practice, the output of which are situated accommodations and the pattern that emerges. Notice, however, that these three components, they have relative independence. They may be misaligned, and there's a lot of effort to bring them together. I would argue, actually, I see this in Athens all the time, when the traffic lights go out, we say there's chaos. Strictly speaking, there is no chaos. The idea of chaos, strictly speaking, is nonsensical. There's a different kind of organization. Not desirable for many of us, but nonetheless, people find a way of arranging their activities so that things can be done. Not efficiently, not in desirable ways, for many of us, but nonetheless, there is a pattern that emerges out of these situated accommodations. What is lacking, perhaps, there is formal representation. So you can have this, as it were, an excessive emphasis on improvisation at the expense of formal organization, or you can have an excessive emphasis on organization as representation, as abstraction, which, however, obscures the other two components. So when Barbara yesterday appealed to us to make organization visible, if I remember the phrase correctly, it was, I think it was about visibility. We must dissociate, she argued, these are my words, formal organization from organizing, or organization in my terms. because one is broader, the latter is broader than the former. So there are instances of organization taking place before our eyes, which we must make visible. And we need to have a particular scheme to make these acts visible and understandable. So let me summarize what I just said. And this is, if you like, the centerpiece of my talk. Here you have these three ontological components: organizational representation, the formal abstraction, the syntax, which, however, is incomplete because it needs its semantics. It gets meaning from the particular practices, collective practices, into which humans are embedded. And at the same time, organization is an emergent pattern of action, which inevitably comes about when people try to interlock their behaviors in open-ended contexts. The logic of the first, of the organizational abstraction, representation, is unsemblistic, identitary. It's set theory. It is about marking, distinguishing, connecting in determinate ways, assembling particular behaviors, assembling representations of behaviors, to be precise. It is about decontextualizing what there is, so that in order to obtain stability and some predictability and endurance. And the logic is closure. Like in all abstract systems, we know this from artificial intelligence research as well, in all abstract systems, the logic is the logic of closure. The categories that we use must remain stable. Otherwise, the system cannot function. But the categories can never remain stable, but precisely because they are instantiated in open-ended contexts, which are unpredictable, hence the need for improvisation, and also because of human reflexivity. The more we reflect on our practices, the more likely it is we may modify our practices. The emphasis here will be on categories, as I said, generalizations, rules, and routines. Here, the important thing is, from an organizational abstraction, representation, the emphasis is indeed on generalizations, if X, then Y types of statements, in emphasizing formal roles, rules, and routines which people would follow. The knowledge, the type of knowledge that is involved here is propositional knowledge, which hopefully is obvious in the very statement, if X, then Y. And that accounts, I think, a lot for this type of knowledge that we see both in organizational research as well as in, when we talk to practicing managers. And action is instrumental in the sense that certain outcomes are desired, and the organization is the organon, the instrument, the tool to achieve those ends. The second is organization as a nexus of practices. It's the semantics. Any abstraction cannot be operative unless it gets its semantics, unless it gets its meaning, and the meaning, as we know, it comes from the human collectivities, and hence we need to be attentive to practices. Here the logic is cultural. That is, it is about people being initiated into particular evaluative distinctions in particular practices. And it is about contextualization. To be able to be a competent practitioner, you've got to contextualize yourself, to socialize yourself, to understand the practice of which one is embedded in order to be able to take effective action. It is about intrinsic goods and standards of excellence, which I described, and knowledge is tacit. It is about the know-how that one obtains when one is a member of practice. And the action is the logic of appropriateness here. It is not so much instrumental. It is from a practice point of view, the action must fit in with the norms of the particular practice. We have, again, this is abundantly clear, I think, in Julian Orr's ethnography, in which repair technicians actually do try to make their actions accountable to one another, and their actions tend to be driven by the logic of appropriateness in that particular practice. And finally, it is organization as an emergent pattern of actions. Here, organization, emerges out of situational accommodations. It is about recontextualizing, as I said earlier.